please subscribe and share for more story. Clara Rowan sat stiffly in the corner of her own living room, clutching her phone as if it were the last piece of dignity she possessed. The room buzzed with ambient jazz and the chatter of nearly 30 guests gathered for her granddaughter Lila's 13th birthday, though to Clara, it looked more like a gala meant to boost her daughter-in-law Brielle's social status. Silver and teal balloons floated near the ceiling while catered trays cost more than Clara used to spend on groceries in a month. She pressed the phone tighter to her ear, listening to Mr. Leonard Hale, a senior appraiser, confirm something that made her heart pound. "Mrs. Rowan," he said gently, "the sapphire and diamond brooch you described is not simple costume jewelry. I can offer you $48,000 today." That number nearly made her dizzy. It was hope. It was escape. But Brielle didn't know that. Instead, she towered over Clara in 4-inch designer heels, her voice sharp enough to slice through the entire room. "Cancel your appointment immediately and get a mop. The kitchen floor is sticky. It's embarrassing to have you sitting here doing nothing. It's the least you can do since we put a roof over your head." Clara looked up slowly, something inside her finally cracking loose. Clara lowered the phone, but did not hang up. Brielle's manicured hand remained pointed toward the kitchen like a command. For the first time in 4,380 days, Clara felt something inside her unclench. She looked up, meeting Brielle's cold eyes that had never held kindness for her. Then Clara spoke a single word she had not allowed herself in 12 years. "No." The room fell silent. A woman in a red dress stopped mid-sip. Even the jazz seemed to dim. Brielle blinked as if slapped. "Excuse me," she demanded, laughing nervously. "What did you just say?" Clara pushed herself to her feet, her back aching from the 6 hours she spent baking the untouched lemon cake. "I said no. I'm on an important call. And I am not your maid." The mask of the perfect hostess shattered. Brielle stepped closer, hissing, "You ungrateful old leech. You're nothing but a burden. If you don't like the rules, get out." Clara's son, Marcus, turned from where he'd been laughing near the fireplace. Lila stared with tears in her eyes. But Marcus said nothing, his silence the sharpest wound of all. Clara waited for Marcus to defend her, to reclaim the man Victor had raised him to be. But he swirled the ice in his drink, staring at his expensive loafers as if they could save him. Clara felt something in her chest break, for good. She had been waiting for a ghost, a version of Marcus that had died long ago under the weight of Brielle's ambition. With shaking hands, Clara picked up her worn leather handbag, the one Victor had given her for their 30th anniversary. Without a word, she walked past Brielle, past the stunned guests, past the whispers of sympathy and guilt. She stepped outside into the cool Seattle evening and did not look back. They had no idea that the call Brielle tried to interrupt wasn't just about money. It was the first domino in a chain that would unravel everything Brielle thought she controlled. She believed she had scolded a servant. Instead, she had ignited a revolution. 20 minutes later, Clara reached the home of her oldest friend, Helen. When Helen opened the door and saw Clara's trembling shoulders, she pulled her inside without a question. Only when the kettle whistled did Clara finally let the tears fall. To understand why walking away hurt so deeply, Clara knew she had to explain how it had all begun. She told Helen about the Tuesday 12 years ago when everything changed. Victor had been pruning his beloved hydrangeas under a brilliant post-rain Pacific Northwest sky while Clara prepared tea. A heavy thud shattered the peaceful morning. By the time she reached him, he was gone. Massive cardiac arrest. He died surrounded by the flowers he loved, and Clara was left alone in a house that suddenly felt like a mausoleum of memories. Marcus visited weekly back then, bringing Brielle and baby Lila. Brielle seemed kind at first, offering casseroles and sympathy. "Mom," Marcus said one rainy afternoon, taking Clara's hands, "this house is too big. You shouldn't be alone. Move in with us. Let us take care of you." His voice was warm, full of love she believed was real. She agreed, thinking she was gaining a family, a bustling home, a second chance at joy. Instead, she walked straight into a trap, one that slowly reshaped her role from mother to barely tolerated intruder. The shift came gradually, so subtle Clara barely noticed it happening. First, Brielle suggested the master bedroom. Made more sense for them since Marcus needed to get ready early for work. "You'll be more comfortable in the guest room?" Brielle insisted, her smile tight. Clara agreed. Then came the kitchen. "Your spices clutter the cabinet. Your cooking is too heavy for us. Let me plan the meals." Within a year, Clara wasn't cooking anymore. She was prepping ingredients for Brielle, chopping vegetables, scrubbing pans, wiping counters. Soon came the finances. "Mom, utilities increased. Can you cover property taxes? The roof needs repair. Could you sign this check?" And she did. Every time. Because she wanted peace. Because she loved Marcus. But the final blow came 4 years ago when Brielle declared the guest room was needed for her new fashion consulting office. "There's a small room off the laundry area," Brielle said breezily. "Quiet. Perfect for you." It was 8 feet by 10 feet, meant for storage, freezing in winter, suffocating in summer. But Clara was too exhausted to argue. She moved into that cold, window-dimmed cell, and that was where she stayed, shrinking more each year. At Helen's kitchen table, Clara recounted everything she'd endured: the endless laundry, the ironing, the quiet labor that kept Brielle's world spinning while Clara lived like a ghost in her own home. She watched them take vacations while she stayed behind a house sit. She watched Brielle buy handbags worth more than Clara's yearly pension. All while Clara told herself it was better than being alone. But saying the words out loud shattered something. Helen's eyes turned steely. "Enough," she said sharply. "This ends tonight." Clara shook her head. "But it's my house, Helen. Marcus says." "I don't care what Marcus says," Helen cut in. "Whose name is on the deed?" Clara blinked. She hadn't looked at the paperwork in years. "Victor left everything to me," she whispered. "I never transferred it." Helen's jaw tightened. "Then you are not a guest. You are the landlord. And they're living on borrowed time." Those words rooted Clara's trembling heart. That night she slept in Helen's guest room wrapped in lavender-scented quilts, a luxury she had forgotten existed. The feeling of safety. The next morning, Helen served pancakes and outlined a plan. "We're going to see my nephew," she declared. "Adrian Cole, you remember little Adrian? The boy who ate dirt?" Clara chuckled weakly. "He's a monster now," Helen added proudly. "One of Seattle's sharpest estate attorneys. And he despises bullies." Adrian's office sat high in a gleaming glass tower, far from the dirt-filled backyard of their memories. He greeted them with a firm handshake, his intelligent eyes softening only slightly as he listened to Clara's story. He took notes on a yellow legal pad, interrupting only once. "Mrs. Rowan," he asked, "you hold the title to the property?" Clara nodded. "Do your son and daughter-in-law pay rent?" "We're family," she whispered. "They pay for groceries. I cover taxes and insurance." Adrian exhaled slowly. In the eyes of the law, they're tenants at will. Complicated, but not unbeatable. The abuse, however, changes everything. He leaned forward. "We must confirm your ownership. And secure your assets immediately." Clara removed the velvet pouch containing the brooch. The sapphire glowed deep blue under the office lights. "This stays out of that house," Adrian said. "Today we place it in a safety deposit box. Now, let's talk about next steps." Adrian explained that to protect herself, Clara needed evidence of Brielle's financial behavior. "If she's draining resources while claiming poverty, we need the truth," he said. Clara felt both fear and resolve building in her chest. Later that afternoon, armed with purpose she had not felt in years, Clara returned to the house at a time she knew Brielle would be sweating through Pilates and Marcus buried in emails at work. Unlocking the front door with her own legally valid key felt strange, like trespassing in a home she owned. She headed straight to Brielle's office, formerly her comfortable guest room. The sleek gray walls had erased all traces of the floral wallpaper Victor once admired. The mahogany desk dominated the room. Clara swallowed her sorrow and focused. She went to the filing cabinet. Inside were meticulous files, client invoices, contracts, tax papers. But in the bottom drawer, Behind glossy fashion magazines, she found an unmarked red accordion folder. She opened it and froze. Credit card statements. Dozens of them. Balances in the tens of thousands, totaling almost $300,000. Clara's heart thudded. But the nightmare was just beginning. Behind the statements lay a letter from an unfamiliar law firm. The subject line drained the blood from Clara's face. Petition for guardianship competency evaluation regarding Clara Rowan. Her hands trembled as she read. The letter outlined a strategy to document imaginary memory lapses, track manufactured, erratic behavior, isolate her from friends to reduce confusion. It was a blueprint to steal her autonomy, her assets, her home. Once declared incompetent, Clara would lose everything. They could sell the house, worth $2.5 million, pay off Brielle's towering debt, and ship Clara to the cheapest nursing facility available. She flipped to the next page. A brochure for Sunset Pines. Clara's stomach twisted. Shared rooms, flickering fluorescent lights, known health code violations. A place designed to make people disappear. At the bottom of the folder was a draft real estate listing. Her house, reduced to a financial solution for Brielle's greed. Clara stared at the documents, her breath shaking. They had planned to erase her. But instead of fear, something colder settled in her chest. Resolve. She photographed every page, every statement, every detail. Then she put the folder back exactly as she found it. When Brielle returned home, Clara stood at the counter peeling potatoes as if nothing had changed. Brielle tossed her yoga mat aside. "Oh, you're back," she said without looking. "I assume you're over your little tantrum." Clara kept her voice steady. "Yes, Brielle. I just needed some air." "Good. Don't let it happen again. We have an important dinner Friday. Investors. I need the house spotless. And please stay in your room this time, no incidents." Clara looked up at her daughter-in-law, seeing for the first time the crack behind her polished exterior. Panic, stress lines buried under expensive creams. Brielle was drowning, and Clara was the raft she planned to sacrifice. Clara nodded. "Of course, Brielle. I'll be invisible." That night she sent every photo to Adrian. His call came within 10 minutes. "This is elder abuse. Fraud. A planned guardianship scam. We have enough to bury them," he said. "But if you can endure one more week, we can catch them fully in the act." Clara inhaled deeply. "I've endured 12 years, she said softly. "What is one more week?" The week became a performance, a cruel play in which Clara portrayed the confused elder Brielle wanted her to be. She misplaced her glasses, asked repeated questions, feigned forgetfulness. Brielle's eyes gleamed with triumph each time she jotted in her little black notebook. Marcus remained nervous, whispering to Brielle late at night behind half-closed doors. They believed they were tightening their grip. Friday arrived with the kind of tension Clara felt in her bones. The house buzzed with cleaning staff. Brielle floated around in a black silk dress that must have cost $3,000, greeting caterers and practicing fake laughs. Marcus paced like a man facing judgment. The investors arrived at 7 p.m. Crystal glasses clinked, polite laughter bounced through the walls, and conversations swirled like perfume. Clara stayed in her tiny room until 8 o'clock, just as Adrian instructed. Then she stepped out wearing her best Sunday suit. Her hair neatly styled, her posture straight. She looked nothing like the frail puppet Brielle had tried to display for weeks. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. Brielle's smile tightened. "Clara," she crooned, "I thought you were resting. You get confused when there are too many people." "I'm not confused," Clara said, her voice clear enough to cut through the room. "I have never been more certain." Marcus stepped forward. "Mom, please go back to your room." "No," Clara replied, turning to face the entire crowd. "We need to talk. All of us." Brielle laughed loudly, the brittle sound echoing across polished floors. "Ignore her. She has dementia. She doesn't know what she's saying." "Is that so?" Clara opened her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. "Then perhaps you can explain why you have a file detailing how to fabricate my incompetence." The room stilled. Clara handed the first photo to the man Brielle had spent weeks flattering. Mr. Henderson? Before investing, you should know your host's business plan includes declaring her mother-in-law insane, selling my home, which she does not own, and placing me in a facility with rodent complaints. Gasps scattered around the room. Mr. Henderson's pleasant expression curdled into disgust. Is this true? He asked Brielle. Brielle lunged forward, reaching for the papers. She's lying. She forged them. This is why we need guardianship. She's delusional. Before Brielle could snatch the envelope, the doorbell thundered. Not a polite ring, an authoritative pounding. Helen opened the door. Adrian stepped inside, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers and a representative from Adult Protective Services. Brielle Nolan, Adrian said evenly. Brielle froze. Yes, she whispered. I represent Mrs. Clara Rowan. We have an emergency protective order requiring your immediate removal from this residence, pending investigation into elder financial abuse and conspiracy to commit fraud. Chaos erupted. Investors backed away. Wine glasses clinked in nervous hands. Brielle's voice rose into a shriek. You can't do this. This is my house. Actually, Adrian replied, lifting a document. It is not. We have the deed confirming Mrs. Rowan as the sole owner. Silence fell heavy. Furthermore, he added, we possess evidence of credit card accounts opened using Mrs. Rowan's identity. The officers stepped forward. Ma'am, you need to gather essentials and leave now. Brielle turned desperately to Marcus. Say something. Tell them. Marcus looked from Brielle to Clara, then at the retreating investors. He seemed to shrink before her eyes. Mom, he whispered. Clara swallowed the ache rising in her throat. I asked you for help for 12 years, Marcus, she said softly. 12. You watched how she treated me. You saw her debts growing. And you were going to sign those papers. You were going to let her send me to that awful place. Marcus shook his head weakly. I didn't think it was that bad. She said it was a nice facility. It had rats, Clara snapped, her voice cracking. Rats, Marcus. And you were going to send your own mother there. Marcus lowered his eyes, shame darkening his face. Clara turned to the officers. I want them both out tonight. The eviction unfolded over nearly 2 hours. Helen held Clara's hand as Brielle and Marcus packed their suitcases under police supervision. Lila sobbed in the hallway. Clara knelt beside her. Grandma, why is this happening? The girl cried. Clara cupped her face gently. Because bullying is wrong, sweetheart. Even when family does it. When the final door closed behind Brielle and Marcus, the house fell into a stillness Clara hadn't heard in years. Not empty, but cleansing. The weeks that followed were brutal in their own way. Legal hearings, statements, paper trails. Brielle faced charges of attempted fraud and identity theft, especially after 2 credit cards opened in Clara's name surfaced. To avoid jail, Brielle accepted a plea deal, 5 years probation, felony record, mandatory restitution. Her business collapsed overnight. Marcus, a quieter casualty, lost his job in the fallout. Employers recoiled from scandal. His marriage to Brielle unraveled under the weight of blame and desperation. They divorced 6 months later. Clara spent time alone in the home she had reclaimed. She sold the brooch, not because she needed the money anymore, but because it symbolized a life lived in silence. She received $48,000, just as Mr. Hale had promised. She renovated the house, bright yellow kitchen paint, new furniture that didn't hurt her back, repairs Victor would have approved of. But as she walked through the widened hallways, she realized the truth. A big house can be lonelier than a small room. Healing required purpose. And she found it, unexpectedly, in women just like her. Clara noticed how many older women in her community were struggling. Widows with shrinking pensions. Divorcees pushed from their homes. Women overlooked, underestimated, isolated. She remembered the hollow ache of her tiny room, the feeling of being useful only when convenient, and decided no woman should endure what she had. So, she created something new, the Rowan House, a co-living sanctuary for active senior women. Not a nursing home, she emphasized to Helen, a home. Helen became the first resident, moving in with her easy laugh and lavender quilts. Then came Mrs. Higgins, a retired librarian nearly evicted after rent hikes. Soon there were 5 women sharing the space, cooking together, tending a vegetable garden behind the hydrangeas, watching movies at night, and reading aloud on rainy afternoons. The house once fueled by tension and fear now hummed with warmth and purpose. Clara found joy in simple rituals, morning tea on the porch, flowers blooming in Victor's garden, laughter echoing through the halls. She had rediscovered what Brielle tried to erase: community, dignity, autonomy, and peace. Marcus visited occasionally, arriving with cautious apologies tucked behind tired eyes. He now lived in a small apartment across town, humbled by the fall. Clara served him coffee on the porch, her boundaries clear but her heart not entirely closed. A truce formed between them, fragile but real. They spoke of Lila, who was thriving, and of Victor, whose absence still rested like a shadow between them. Marcus sometimes apologized again, voice cracking. Clara rarely responded. She didn't need to. The consequences had already taught him what words could not. Once he asked, "Will things ever be the same?" Clara smiled softly. Nothing broken becomes exactly what it was. But broken things can still find new shapes. Vanessa, however, now Brielle again, attempted contact only once. She sent a text asking for money. Clara blocked her immediately. "No room for poison," she murmured, tapping her phone with finality. Rowan House had no space for shadows of the past, only for women ready to rebuild. And Clara intended to protect this sanctuary with fierceness she once didn't know she possessed. Clara often reflected on how easy it had been to shrink herself, how quietly dignity could be stolen when loss softened a person's edges. For 12 years, she had believed kindness meant silence and love meant sacrifice. But those beliefs nearly destroyed her. Now, when she spoke to the women who joined Rowan House, she told them the truth. "Dignity isn't something you ask for," she said during their weekly tea circle. "It's something you claim." The women nodded, understanding in their bones what Clara meant. Many shared their own stories: financial manipulation, emotional neglect, families who saw them only as burdens. Together, they rewrote themselves. Together, they healed. Clara often walked the garden paths Victor once tended. The hydrangeas bloomed brighter each year, as if celebrating her rebirth. She felt Victor's presence there, not in sorrow, but in quiet encouragement. "I made it, Vic," she whispered once, touching a blue petal. "I found my way back." And she had. Not to the woman she once was, but to. Clara continued shaping Rowan House into something remarkable. She learned the strengths of each woman. Helen became the organizer, setting up weekly schedules and monthly group outings. Mrs. Higgins ran the reading club, teaching everyone to annotate like a scholar. Another resident, Yvonne, who once worked as a chef, started weekend cooking classes. The home became a sanctuary of shared purpose. One evening, during a communal dinner, Helen lifted her glass. "To Clara," she said warmly, "for creating a place where we are seen." The women cheered. Clara blushed. "I didn't create this alone," she said. "You all breathed life into these walls." After dinner, as the women washed dishes together, Clara felt a gentle fullness in her heart. Belonging. A feeling she hadn't known in more than a decade. Later that night, as she locked the front door, she thought of all the doors Brielle had closed on her. Emotionally, practically, deliberately. Clara smiled softly. "Look at me now," she whispered to herself. She wasn't a shadow anymore. She wasn't invisible. She was a builder. Of homes, of hope, of futures. A few months later, Rowan House hosted an open house for community members. Many older women arrived shyly, stepping through the doorway as if entering a dream. Clara welcomed each with a warm smile and fresh tea. One woman, Judith, pulled Clara aside. "My daughter says I'm in the way," she whispered. "She wants my room for her home office." The words struck Clara like an echo of her own past. Clara gently squeezed Judith's hand. You are not in the way. You are part of this world. And there are places like this one, made for women like you. Judith's eyes filled with tears. Several women asked about moving in. Clara realized Rowan House wasn't just a sanctuary, it was a seed. Something that could grow. That evening, she stood on the porch watching twilight settle over the neighborhood. For the first time in years, she felt her life expanding instead of shrinking. She whispered to the quiet air, Victor, you'd be proud. A warm breeze rustled the hydrangeas, as if in answer. But healing wasn't only about the future, it also meant facing remnants of the past. One afternoon, Marcus returned with Lila, now taller and more confident. Lila ran into Clara's arms. Grandma, guess what? I got into the school play. Clara laughed with genuine joy. Of course you did, sweetheart. You shine wherever you go. Marcus watched them, his expression a mixture of regret and gratitude. After Lila went to help Helen in the kitchen, Marcus sat with Clara on the porch. Mom, he began quietly, I'm sorry. For everything. Clara looked at him. I know. I should have protected you, he whispered. I should have seen what was happening. Clara exhaled. You chose peace over truth, Marcus. And peace built on silence always collapses. He nodded, tears in his eyes. Can we be better now? Clara placed her hand over his. We can try. Trying is enough. It was not forgiveness, but it was movement. A door cracked open instead of slammed shut. One evening, Clara sat in the garden with Helen, watching fireflies blink among Victor's hydrangeas. Do you ever think about what would have happened if Brielle had succeeded? Helen asked softly. Clara nodded. Sometimes. But not with fear anymore. More with gratitude. Helen raised a brow. Gratitude? Yes, Clara answered. Because hitting the bottom forced me to rise. It pushed me to reclaim myself. Helen smiled knowingly. You always had a spine, Clara. You just forgot where you put it. They both laughed. Clara leaned back, inhaling the cool night air. She thought of the word Brielle used, burden, and she compared it to the word Helen used, seen. Clara realized she'd been living someone else's definition of her worth. Now she lived her own. And it was infinitely greater. And the next year, Rowan House expanded. Clara purchased the empty duplex next door, transforming it into Rowan House East, doubling their capacity. Grants and donations flowed in as word spread about the project. Local news featured Clara's story. People called her an inspiration, a symbol of resilience. She smiled politely through interviews but afterward confided to Helen, I wasn't trying to inspire anyone. I was just trying to breathe again. Helen chuckled. Sometimes breathing is the bravest thing. Clara trained new staff, set new policies, and created a scholarship fund for senior women needing emergency housing. Her purpose, once dimmed, now burned brightly. Victor would have teased her about being a CEO. She smiled at the thought. I suppose I am, she whispered once, signing documents in her sunny kitchen, and 3 years after she walked out of Brielle's shadow and into her own life, Clara stood in the renovated backyard overlooking rows of blooming hydrangeas. The garden hummed with life, women laughing, bees drifting, Lila painting a mural on the fence for her school project. Clara closed her eyes, letting the sun warm her face. She thought of everything she had lost, Victor, her self-worth, her place in her home. Then everything she had gained, freedom, community, purpose. She whispered, I am exactly where I'm meant to be. For the first time in a long time, the words felt true. She had fought for her dignity and won. She had built something beautiful from wreckage. She had turned survival into power. Clara often shared her story at community events, ending with the lesson carved from her years of pain. Dignity is not something you ask for, she told crowds. It is something you take, and you protect, and you refuse to let anyone steal. Women nodded, tears in their eyes. Some saw themselves in her. Some saw their mothers. Some saw their future strength. If you are sitting in a room feeling small, Clara continued, stand up. Because the view from your feet is better than the view from your knees. The audience always fell silent, absorbing her truth. As the years passed, Clara, now 75 years old, didn't feel old. She felt alive. She ran a thriving organization. She lived with friends who cherished her. She